It's the state of the dungeon! It's a video that Rob does about his games. Yeah! Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. I am Rob, and you are here with me in the Lair of Omnisci to cover another of my State of the Dungeon addresses. This particular game was the game that took place on October 7th in the year 2021. The game, Mighty Protectors Endgame. It's a little overused, but kind of fits. The group has now been told what this is all about, what the campaign has been all about, from the deductions of Sven, the previously smartest man on the planet. That may not actually be true, but he's still really smart. And he's deduced, for the most part, where it all came from, what has happened, and he's imparted that to the players. He told them about the Gifters, a group of people who spontaneously, through the many people who have been born, lived, and died, the ones who have the incredibly rare spark, just a perfect twist that advances them up to the epitome of humanity evolutionarily, skipping entire generational shifts all the way up to an enlightened, near immortal age where they don't age, they're incredibly intelligent and have a perspective that transcends humanity. Some could say that's kind of enviable. I don't know. One of these beings supposedly has been around for 250,000 years. That's gotta be uncomfortable. But, at any rate, these beings have kind of gotten together in a Congress and decreed that the time is right for this great saga, which basically wraps up the entirety of human experience. Now, the group is allowed to ask some questions of Sven, which is basically their opportunity to kind of peek behind the curtain. And they found out that the Gifters are human. They were born from humans. And just again, it's just an incredibly rare circumstance that a person could possibly be one of these Gifters. To be one, you become immortal, and also the other Gifters that are there ahead of you will find you and will induct you into the group. And you're pledged to basically watch humanity grow, to observe everything without really interfering a great deal. Has this been done before in fiction? Maybe once or twice, but it's my story. Leave me alone. At any rate, the Gifters are, well, they don't really seem to be benign, but not malicious either. They're just kind of there until recently. They really haven't done anything throughout humanity. Although some of the more inexplicable things that happen throughout human history might actually follow the feet of one or more of the Gifters, as well as potentially some of the bad things that have happened to people over time. So, the group, after having their questions answered, which really didn't take very long, they didn't have a tremendous amount of questions at this point, either because their characters just weren't in a position to care anymore, or the players just weren't thinking about it very much. But yeah, they asked some questions, they got some answers, and then Sven's like, alright, what's going to happen next? The greatest gifted the world is going to see is going to play out something that was very prevalent in the minds of millions of people, possibly even over 1 billion people at one point. The absolute fear that the world is going to be destroyed by nuclear Armageddon, which was in the possession of the forces of the United States and Russia. So, while the myths of King Arthur or the Vikings certainly had an impact on a lot of people, nothing compared to the life-changing effects that crystallized the nationalism of the United States and the free world and the Russian bloc and communism. So, this is going to get played out when the President of the United States is given the most impressive battery of powers that any of the Gifted have had, and the President of Russia is going to get as much power as anybody has had, and they will play that conflict out in front of the world. This didn't make the players very happy, because of their ideological leanings. Many of them aren't exactly happy with the president that we had in 2020. And did not trust his potential mental stability if given powers akin to a young god. So they were a little worried. And they're likewise worried that Vladimir Putin would, if given the powers of a demigod himself, might prove to not necessarily be the person you'd want to see be given incredible powers. Powers that should eclipse their own by several degrees of magnitude. But the group is cast in the role of the everyman. They are capable of interjecting and changing the course of events to put their own stamp on the world if they choose to exercise it. If they don't, that's a kind of a statement on humanity as a whole anyhow. So what they do could be very, very important. Perhaps unfortunate for humanity, a lot of what they did, well, first they trained, which was good. They had some points and they needed to spend, so they are as ready as they're going to be. Bulwark geared up on guns and weaponry. Not actual guns, but he jacked his invention power up so that he could freely grab the power that he was interested in, which was to craft a disintegrating touch-only katana. Kind of nasty weapon. Rook, Sentinel likewise beefed up their abilities. Rook has now enhanced himself to human perfection, 20s in all stats, without going into extended levels, which are powers unto themselves. He's as good as he can be. And his numbers have never looked better, quite honestly. And Muscles and Rooks also had made some improvements along the way. And floated some different ideas on things that they could do and try. So, the characters are all better. And again, probably this is their final time they're going to have to really enhance themselves, unless they get some respite from what's about to happen. So, eventually, Sven said, you don't have anything else to ask? I'll kick you through. And got them out through the portal, gave them a little dab of Frost Giant blood to activate the portal, because that's what the portal was keyed on, was this Frost Giant blood, and whew, they're gone and through. Well, they show up, and there are the Aesir, and Odin shatters the portal. Yay! Good things all around. Except now the group can't get back to see Sven, but yeah, it's okay. So the group, talks. The Aesir basically say, hey, want to come with us to Valhalla? We're going to have a party. Probably one of the biggest parties we've ever had, because Ragnarok is coming soon. So it's time to have a big party. And the group's like, no, we've got work to do. Although some of them were sorely tempted. But they went back to the fire base. And it was at this time when things were just kind of starting to feel a bit strange, like things were getting even more strained and more, even though the weather was gone, everything was pretty ideal. They're like, we've got to get back. First of all, Sven promised that he would be able to bring Muscles' cat back to their base, and Muscles was looking forward to seeing his kitty. So that was a big thing. But also, they just needed to regroup. They talked to Veronica on the flight back and appraised her of the situation. Veronica is clearly rattled by all of this. Mostly because, as the leaders of their respective nations, and which are nuclear powers, the fear is that either man is so petty that if they fear they're going to lose in a battle to their nemesis, which they're, knowing the kind of people they are, would probably be to the death to try to steal each other's power, they would possibly call on their nuclear arsenal to even the score. Attack your opponent with nuclear weapons to distract them so that you can get another shot in, or whatever. It's a trump card that they're holding. Terrible. It's, they're just holding that as a possibility, quite possibly. And it's, of course, the worst case scenario that most can think of. The possibility that two very ego-driven men who have that much power, and then superpowers on top of that, would clash to the end and unleash on the entire world that kind of horror. So, a lot of the discussion went around, how do we stop this? Endless thought trains were followed, derailed in some cases, started up again, on how we can stop this from happening. How to stop nuclear weapons from being a deal. They had some help. The international community, from a variety of different nations, has already had a vested interest in preventing a madman from ascending to power and using nuclear weapons. In America, there are concrete operations that allies and third parties have. It's a thin shield because it might not work. And everything may still go off because that system is pretty robust, but if they can prevent most of the harm, they might be able to stop a lot of the American arsenal from being employed, potentially. Not enough to stop the danger altogether, however. And unfortunately, on the other side, that's a problem because they really have not penetrated into Russia's nuclear arsenal enough to say that they have any hope of stopping them from launching a majority of their weaponry. So, as far as Veronica being able to call in all of her markers, it's unlikely that they'll be able to stop the nuclear weapons just like that. On the other hand, trying to use Rook's power to try to blanket and stop any such order from coming out really, unfortunately, underscored that they didn't really understand how that whole network of codes and signals and whatever might be employed, possibly even without fancy computers. It can even survive an EMP wave shutting down the computer networks and the internet, so to speak, or even phone lines for the most part that aren't hardwired. So there are fallbacks, there are methods. So yeah, it's stopping such a thing with just one gifted's power to block everything in a 2-mile radius that's outside of the bounds. So some of the conversation went dark on exactly how far they were willing to go to possibly try to stop things, until it was brought up that one of the things that gifters do is that if two people, if somebody fights a gifted and would kill that gifted, things often happen so they get away. Part of it is comic book logic, but also part of it is the gifters want these battles to play out. They want people to face their nemesis. They want these storylines to play out over humanity. To what end? Nobody knows. But shortcutting it by, say, trying to snipe King Arthur and take him out before he gets a chance to do anything, the gifters don't like that. And things generally tend to go badly when those kind of events are explored and followed. So the idea of possibly trying to assassinate one or the other of them seemed unlikely. And also moral gray areas that, again, these people are not trained killers. As much as two of them say, we were in the military. Yeah, that still doesn't make you a naturally trained killer. As a matter of fact, most people in the group have tried very hard not to use their powers in a lethal fashion. Only a couple of people have been killed relative to how easy it would be for many of them to have already racked up a significant body count, and would then have a very hard time salvaging any reputation in the international community. So, this talk about, taking one out or the other just kind of started to ring hollow after a little while, and the arguments got circular and didn't really go anywhere for a while. So they got back to base. There was a joyful reunion with Muscles and his kitty. The group got to rest up because they were tired. It was a long trip. They got to meet one of the new members of the team. His name is Talisman, nice gentleman of the Cree Indian tribe who has the ability to create basically talismans that give a power to whoever's holding it, some sort of an effect. If you were wounded, he could make up a regeneration talisman, give it to you, and while you were wearing it, you would enjoy the regeneration power. He has an actually fairly wide range of abilities, but none of them are incredibly powerful. He's not very strong, and he needs time to prepare. So, you know, he's got, certainly, I think, an interesting power. It was fun designing him. But after the rest, it was discovered that the President of the United States, Trump, had gotten his power. How did he demonstrate that he had had his power? Shortly after waking up, he realized that he could sense all of the internet at once, basically. So he basically took control of Twitter. He fired on every single account, active and otherwise, on Twitter at once. America is about to become great again. Or no, just about to become great. And it was from him, but he was able, just using his gift, which is vastly more powerful right now than even Rook's very, very strong abilities, to force feed that into the internet. And immediately started creating a media empire around himself and his abilities, which is pretty stone cold. Most of the others are like, can't do anything about this. Rook was despondent, to say the least, repeatedly contemplating suicide as a way out of dealing with a Trump-powered world. He still let most things still operate, but his stamp was on everything. And he has a very, very, very powerful communication ability, which is strictly tied into computers and social media. And in that, he is supreme. Nobody else has a shred of a possibility of keeping him out or not having him see. He blows through security measures, encryption, everything. He just is. Which is probably how a lot of the world feels about the United States, really, that we're just a big block of ridiculous power there. So, that's a thing, and he immediately started firing off press junkets about how, you know, he is now gifted, his codename is Warhead, and he is demonstrated his ability to fire off power blasts out to miles of huge coruscating power that doesn't seem to tax him at all. He can fly at very high speeds, much faster than the group can. And yeah, he also has the ability to raise walls by his own will and gifts alone. So he started making the southern border by himself. Just yeah, kind of bleak stuff, really. They know he can fly, super strong, nigh indestructible, very strong power attack, the ability to do geomorphing stuff. The communications is just the cherry on top of the sundae. Yeah, he's very ridiculously powerful. And of the adversary, Putin, nothing. Russia is locked down. Nobody goes in, nobody goes out. Anybody who tries to go in doesn't come out again. There's no signals coming out. The few people who do manage to escape are haunted, talking about how Russia is now full of mists and bears, and people just spontaneously break down in praise of Vladimir Putin, their great leader. Although nobody sees him. It's a mystery. The group is not happy with these turn of events, clearly. They're trying to make plans, but a lot of it seems to be waiting out until the time for the big clash, which was divined by Sven that their meeting ground, if nothing else were to change it, was going to be over the Bering Strait, separating Alaska from Siberia. Which, it's a 14-mile gap, relatively unpopulated area. Although, you know, cruise ships that go through there, there's the Inuit people are not too far off. You know, if there's a massive smackdown battle between two of the most powerful gifted in the world, there will be collateral damage, undoubtedly. So, yeah, They have no idea how it's all going to play out. All they could do is try to prepare. So, they were following a lead. Sven told them that they'd already met somebody who could significantly help them. And they met them in Germany, which was GiftedCon. And they racked their brains trying to think of all the people that they met at GiftedCon. They ticked them off one by one. They talked to Mr. Universe, a nice gentleman, a quiet British scholar from England who just happens to have pretty impressive, very localized reality-changing powers, and was the first person to really give them the nitty-gritty on what the Nemesis is and means. They tried to talk to, they did talk to Aleister Crowley, the reincarnated Aleister Crowley, who admitted that while he might be able to do some small things when they're talking about the power level that he's been told of and is divining, his candle in the wind. Nothing that can stop that. The group eventually realizes that the only person they've met who really has a significant chance of taking a chunk out of somebody's power appears to be Adam. Adam was the figure who crashed the party at GiftedCon in Germany. He had a box and he was using it to suck people dry of their abilities. And obviously that caught everybody's attention. None of the members of the group really got hit by that. Muscles got his power drained a little bit, but not any of his significant powers. So this guy has only been seen as an adversary. The group realized he could be very useful. They also found out that his box that he was using to absorb people's power and abilities was actually just an extension of his gift. It's a magnifier and a battery that he can use to suck up power and store it. They realize that even if they have the box, which they do now, they really can't use it. It's useless without Adam. So they use their connections to find out that Adam is actually in the employ, control, something, of the Sons of Ramses, a group, international group of power brokers who are trying to use the gifted as to their advantage, mostly by bringing them into the fold as a militant arm of their organization, but as things kind of caused their presence to be a little bit more open than they liked, they went underground while big power players like Smash were very unsubtle and drew a lot of heat from them. The Sons of Ramses have not been very overt. However, don't underestimate Veronica Murphy. Their employer? Director? Controller? Mostly at this point advisor and guide, because honestly she can't give them any orders at this point. They know what's coming up and they're preparing everything they have for it, and all she can do is help. But she does know the identity of one Lord Godalming, who is a figure within the Sons of Ramses. And he is a member of the House of Lords of British Parliament. So, time to contact him. They do. They let him know they know who he is. He doesn't deny it, although it startles him that they know. They let him know they're not interested in breaking him and his group. They want to make a deal. They need their cooperation, mostly in giving them the service of Adam. I believe the plan at this point is to let Putin and Trump fight, let one win, whatever that means, and then drain the power of the winner so that he can be beaten. They can put an end to it. Godalming was very, yeah, absolutely, we'll work with you on this. So that took the group by surprise. He didn't ask for anything, he didn't demand anything, he just acquiesced. That's always going to be suspicious when somebody you suspect is a villain just says, yeah, alright, no problem. So they've got that to look forward to. It is now only a day and a half before the fated battle is to occur. Trump has been doing all kinds of things. The group isn't even really paying that much attention anymore. Rook has basically retreated, dampening his powers willingly with a talisman from Talisman to dampen his power so that he can't be engaged by Trump's massive media roar. He's also communicated with the sovereignty of the internet, which is basically the domain of several gifted whose powers range towards technology. As a matter of fact, one of them, AI, who they know and you could say they're friends, is at this point devoting all of his energy and even consciousness into creating a wall in several protected domains up in Canada to keep Trump's influence out, so that there is some place on the internet that he can't get into. There are a few people who are seeking asylum and refuge there, and now Rook has a backdoor to get there if he needs to, for as long as it can hold out. It's a shrinking line in the sand. So this is becoming rather urgent for everybody's mental health. The group can feel the gravity. Hopefully they can get some good ideas going through. They've considered a lot of people, but they haven't adapted a large number of people to this crusade, so will they have some active cleverness that sees them through? Will they actually be able to get a coalition that will be able to put an end to this threat to all of the freedoms that they have enjoyed up to this point? Will they just end up watching the world burn, nuclear holocaust and fire, and watching all of this stuff that's been going on with Gifted and so on vanish in a nuclear haze? I don't know. We'll see together, though, if you stick with us and watch the next episode or two of Mighty Protectors. Until that time, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Thank you and farewell.